The sound of a woman's skull cracking against frozen ground stopped Nathaniel Crawford's heart. He'd ridden 12 miles into Broken Ridge for nails. Simple errand, in and out. No talking if he could help it. 6 years of silence had become his armor, and he wore it well. But February 14th, 1879 would be the day that armor shattered. Storm, his gray mare, halted without command. The horse felt it before Nate did. Something wrong in the air, something broken. Then came the scream. Not a scream of surprise or pain. This was the sound of a woman who'd stopped expecting help, who'd screamed so many times that her voice had learned the shape of hopelessness. It carved through the Montana cold like a blade through skin. Nate's hand found his rifle before his mind caught up. Main Street stretched before him, wide and white with yesterday's snow. 50 people, maybe more, lined the boardwalks and doorways. Shopkeepers in their aprons, women clutching shawls tight against the cold. Men with hands shoved deep in pockets, all of them watching, all of them still. At the center of it all, Marcus Brennan dragged his wife through the mud by her hair. Eleanor Brennan stumbled. Her husband's fist caught her jaw with a sound like wood splitting. She went down hard. Her head struck the frozen street. That's what Nate had heard. That crack. That terrible wet crack of bone meeting ice. On the porch of the Brennan house, 4 little girls screamed. The oldest, maybe 10 years old, clutched an infant to her chest. The baby couldn't have been more than days old. Its wailing cut through the February air high and desperate. A girl of 7 stood frozen beside her sister, eyes wide and blank. The youngest, 5 at most, sobbed into her sister's skirt. Marcus Brennan stood over his wife. His boot hovered above her head, preparing to finish it. 4th daughter, he spat loud enough for the whole town to hear. 4 daughters and not 1 son. Cursed woman. Nobody moved. Sheriff Cole Davis stood on the boardwalk, arms crossed over his barrel chest, jaw working a piece of tobacco. He'd been elected to protect. He'd chosen to watch. Reverend Michael Hayes bowed his head. Prayer or cowardice, hard to tell which. His lips moved, but no sound came out. No intervention, no righteous anger. Just silent words that changed nothing. Martha Thompson turned away from her store window. 60 years old, and she'd seen enough cruelty to last 10 lifetimes. But seeing it and stopping it were different things. In Broken Ridge, you learned to look away. You learned to survive. Marcus raised his boot higher. Eleanor curled around herself, old habit protecting a belly that held nothing now. She'd given birth 3 days ago. Another daughter, another disappointment, another reason for her husband's rage. Nate hit the ground running. Brennan! The name cracked across Main Street like a rifle shot. Marcus froze mid-stomp. His boot hovered suspended. He turned slow. Recognition flickered across his face when he saw Nathaniel Crawford walking toward him. Not running, walking. 10 years as a Texas Ranger had taught Nate that the walk was the weapon. The silence before it, the certainty. Ain't your concern, Crawford. Marcus lowered his boot, but didn't step back. Right on. Nate kept walking, 3 feet away, close enough to smell whiskey on Marcus's breath, close enough to count the blood drops frozen on his knuckles, close enough to see the calculation in his eyes. Marcus Brennan owned half the county, sat on the town council. His father's name carried weight. But weight meant nothing against a man who'd stopped caring about consequences 6 years ago. Can't, Nate said. His voice came out flat, empty, the way it had sounded for 6 years. She's bleeding out in the street. She's my wife. Marcus's jaw tightened. My property. My business. Property. Nate let the words sit between them. That what you call her, law does. Law also says you can't beat a person half dead in public. Nate's hand rested easy on his rifle. Not threatening yet. Just present. Just ready. Seems we got a problem. The crowd shifted. Whispers rippled through the cold air. Eleanor tried to stand. Her arm buckled. She fell face first into bloody snow. Marcus laughed. The sound had no humor in it. Look at her. Pathetic. 15 years of marriage. 4 daughters. Not 1 son to carry my name. My father's land needs an heir. So you beat her for something God decides. She's cursed. Doctor said that, did he? Doctor's a professional. Doctor's a fool, Nate said quiet. And you're worse for believing him. Movement on the porch drew both men's eyes. The oldest girl handed the infant to her sister and stepped forward, 10 years old with fists clenched at her sides and eyes that had seen too much. "Leave Mama alone," she said. Marcus spun. "Sarah, get inside before I—" "Before what?" Nate's voice dropped. "Cold. Dangerous. Somehow colder than the February wind. You going to hit your daughter too right here in front of everyone?" Something flickered across Marcus's face. Fear and calculation mixed. He thought of his town council seat, his father's legacy, his reputation. In Montana Territory, a man could beat his wife behind closed doors, and the law looked away. But in public, with witnesses, with a former ranger watching, the rules changed. Marcus stepped back from Eleanor. "This ain't finished, Crawford." "Didn't figure it was." "She comes home tonight, or I get the sheriff to drag her back. Sheriff can try." The words were quiet, simple. But Sheriff Davis suddenly found his boots real interesting. He'd heard stories about Nathaniel Crawford, the things he'd done during his ranger years, the men he'd killed. The legend didn't match the broken hermit who lived 12 miles outside town, but legends had a way of being true when it mattered. Marcus spat in the snow, red from Eleanor's blood. He stalked toward the saloon, 3 men following. The rest of the crowd stayed, watching, waiting, always waiting for someone else to act. Nate knelt beside Eleanor, worse up close. Split lip, swelling eye that would seal shut by nightfall. Bruises on her throat, fingerprint shaped and purple. And beneath the fresh wounds, older ones. Yellow-green shadows of violence, healed, crooked. A nose broken and set wrong. Years of this. Years. "Ma'am?" His voice came out gentler than he'd spoken in 6 years. She flinched. That single word from a man's mouth made her flinch. "I ain't going to hurt you." Her good eye focused, blue like winter ice, empty and full both at once. Why? Nate had no answer he could give, not with Clara and Samuel's graves fresh in his mind, not with the sound of his wife's screaming still echoing in nightmares, not with 6 years of failure carved into his bones, because when Eleanor screamed it sounded like Sarah. Because he couldn't save his wife, but maybe he could save this one. Because walking away would kill the last piece of himself that still remembered being human. "Can you stand?" he asked instead. "Don't know." He slid his arms under her. She weighed nothing. Fear and bones and 15 years of surviving what should have killed her. He lifted her onto Storm. The mare held steady, sensing the delicacy of her burden. "Sarah." Nate turned to the oldest girl, her head snapped up, eyes wide. "How you know my name? Heard your mama call you. Get your sisters. All of them. Now." "Mister, we can't. Your mama needs help. My ranch is closer than anywhere. You coming, or you going to stand there while she bleeds?" The calculation happened fast in Sarah's eyes. She'd learned to make impossible choices young. Stay meant watching her mother die. Go meant trusting a stranger. Neither option good. But one option had her mother breathing. She grabbed the 7-year-old's hand. That girl grabbed the 5-year-old. They ran to the porch, Sarah scooping up the infant with practiced ease. 4 girls pressed together in survival mode. Nate mounted behind Eleanor, settling her against his chest. The girls clustered in front, finding space where there shouldn't be any. Storm adjusted her stance, taking the weight. "Crawford," Sheriff Davis found his voice, "you can't take a man's family." "Watching it happen," Nate said. "There will be consequences. Already are. You've just been ignoring them." Storm moved forward. The crowd parted like water around stones. Some faces showed relief. Others showed judgment. Most showed nothing at all. That's how people survived in small towns. By feeling nothing in public. Margaret Thompson stepped from her store as they passed. She pressed a bundle into the saddlebag. Medicine, bandages, cloth for binding wounds. Her wrinkled hands shook. "Take care of them," she whispered. "All of them." "Yes, ma'am." Marcus Brennan's voice followed them down Main Street. "I'll burn that ranch to the ground, Crawford. You hear me? I'll burn it all." Nate didn't look back. 12 miles of frozen prairie stretched between Broken Ridge and the Crawford Ranch. Bitter wind cut through layers. The weak sun did nothing against the cold. Eleanor drifted in and out of consciousness. Her blood soaked through Nate's coat, warm at first, then cold. The girls huddled together, shivering and silent. 5 miles out, the oldest girl spoke. "You going to hurt Mama too?" Nate pulled Storm to a stop, middle of nowhere, wind cutting through all of them. He dismounted slow, knelt in the snow until he was eye level with Sarah, the 10-year-old. "I ain't going to hurt your mama. Not now. Not ever. None of you." Sarah studied his face, looking for lies, looking for the signs she'd learned to read in her father. "Emma, that's a good, strong name." He took off his hat, held it in both hands. "I ain't going to hurt your mama. Not now. Not ever. None of you." Emma studied his face, looking for lies, looking for the signs she'd learned to read in her father. The tightness around the eyes before a blow, the set of the jaw before rage, the small tells that meant run or hide or protect the little ones. "Papa said nice things too," Sarah said finally. "I reckon he did." "How do I know you're different?" "You don't. Not yet. Words are cheap. Only thing that proves different is time." Sarah's jaw tightened. Too much weight for 10 years old. "Mama can't take more. She'll die." "I know. The baby needs her. Violet's only 3 days old." "I know that too." "If you hurt any of them," Sarah's voice went flat. "Dead. The way voices got when they'd run out of hope. "I'll kill you myself." Nate didn't smile, didn't dismiss her. 7 years old making death threats should have been absurd. But her eyes held nothing childish. Only the cold calculation of a girl who'd watched her mother beaten for a decade and learned that sometimes killing was mercy. "If I hurt them," Nate said, meeting her stare, "I'll deserve it." Something shifted in Emma's face. Not trust. The seed of what might become trust. Maybe. The oldest girl, Sarah, spoke up from Storm's back. "Mr. Crawford, Mama needs medicine." "How far to your house?" 7 more miles. Nate mounted. They rode. His ranch sat alone against the horizon when they finally reached it. Half-finished cabin, solid barn, nothing else for miles. 6 years ago, he'd planned to build more, add rooms for children, plant trees, raise a family with Sarah. Then fever took her, took their son Benjamin 3 days later, same age as baby Violet. Nate had stopped building, stopped planning, stopped everything but breathing. Now 5 strangers needed shelter, and his half-built life would have to be enough. "Sarah," he said as they approached. The girl was already moving. She'd done this before. Too many times. She helped her sisters down with efficiency that broke Nate's heart. They got Eleanor inside onto the bed, the only bed, the one Nate hadn't slept in since Sarah died. He built the fire high while Sarah stripped her mother's frozen clothes with practiced hands. 10 years old, and she knew exactly where the worst wounds were. How to be gentle with broken ribs, how to keep her sisters calm while their mother bled. Hot water's on the stove. Nate kept his back turned, giving them privacy, giving Eleanor dignity. "Clean rags in the trunk, medicine in my saddlebag." "You ain't staying?" Sarah's voice held suspicion. "Barn needs checking. Your mama don't need a man standing over her right now. She needs her girls." He reached the door. Sarah's voice stopped him. "Most men would stay. Watch." Nate turned just enough to meet her eyes. "I ain't most men." He left, closed the door soft. The cold hit him like a fist, and he welcomed it. Needed something to feel besides the rage building in his chest. 6 years avoiding other people's trouble. 6 years telling himself he was done with caring. Done with losing. But that scream, that sound of a woman who'd stopped expecting help, he'd heard it before, in nightmares. In Sarah's voice when the fever took hold and the doctor said nothing more could be done. He couldn't save Sarah, couldn't save Benjamin. But maybe these 5, maybe. Hours passed in the barn. Nate checked Storm, fed her, brushed her down, mended tack he'd already mended twice. Anything to keep his hands busy, anything to avoid thinking about the family inside his cabin, the family that wasn't his, the family he had no right to claim. But they were there, and Marcus Brennan would come for them. And Nate would have to decide if he still had it in him to fight. Midnight found him sitting in the straw rifle across his lap, not sleeping. He heard the cabin door open, footsteps across frozen ground. Eleanor stood in the doorway, wrapped in a quilt face swollen beyond recognition, one eye sealed shut. "Mr. Crawford," her voice came out thick through split lips. "Ma'am, you should be in bed. Need to say something first." Morning's fine. Can't wait. She gripped the door frame like it was the only thing holding her up. I don't know what you want from us. Don't know why you did what you did. But whatever it is, her voice cracked. Tell me now so I can prepare my girls. Nate stood slow. This shattered woman expected nothing from the world but more pain, expected every kindness to have a price, expected every rescue to be another trap. I don't want anything, he said. Men always want something. Then maybe men need to change. That ain't an answer. No, ma'am. He took a breath. The words came hard, rusty from disuse. Here's truth. 6 years back I lost my wife Sarah, lost my son too, Benjamin. 3 days old, same as your Violet. Fever took them both. Eleanor's expression stayed fixed. The swelling made reading her impossible. I've been dead since then, going through motions, working, eating, sleeping, none of it meaning a damn thing. Then I heard you scream this morning, and something woke up in me. I don't know what. Maybe guilt, maybe rage, maybe just couldn't walk away anymore. He met her good eye. Your healing ain't my job, and I ain't asking it to be. You and your girls stay long as you need. No strings, no price. When you're healed enough to go, if that's what you want, I'll give you supplies and money for wherever. Why should I believe that? Shouldn't. Not yet. Only time proves anything. And when Marcus comes, Nate's jaw went tight. Then he finds out why I stopped being a ranger. Something flickered in Eleanor's eye. Not hope. Hope was too big a word, but maybe the memory of what hope used to feel like. My girls are scared of men, she said quiet. All men, even the kind ones, might never trust you. That's their right. She swayed. Nate stepped forward, then stopped. Waited. Permission had to come from her. You can help me in, she said finally. Just this once. He crossed the distance, let her lean on his arm. She weighed nothing. Bones and willpower, that's all that was holding her up. Inside, 3 girls slept tangled together by the fire. The infant fussed in a drawer, turned cradle. He helped Eleanor to the bed, pulled blankets over her, careful, avoiding the worst bruises. Mr. Crawford. Nate. Just Nate. My name's Eleanor. Eleanor Ann Whitfield. Was. Before. Eleanor Ann. That's a strong name. The smallest nod. Thank you for today. Rest now, Eleanor Ann. He turned to leave. Her voice stopped him at the door. Nate. He waited. That thing about waking up? Her voice faded, sleep pulling her down. I've been dead too. Longer than 6 years. Maybe we're both learning how to breathe again. He didn't answer. Couldn't. He stepped into the cold. Stars burned overhead, distant and uncaring. Somewhere in Broken Ridge, Marcus Brennan was planning revenge. Here, 5 broken people slept under Nate's roof. He walked back to the barn, sat in the straw, didn't sleep. But for the first time in 6 years, he didn't want to. Morning came gray and cold. Nate had been splitting wood since before dawn. Sleep was a stranger he'd stopped expecting to visit. 6 years of insomnia had carved permanent shadows under his eyes, but today felt different. Today, there were voices inside his cabin, small voices, living voices. The door opened. Sarah stood there, 10 years old, going on 30. Dark circles under her eyes matched his own. She'd kept watch all night, protecting her mother and sisters from a threat she couldn't name, from kindness she didn't trust. Mama's still out, she said. Statement, not question. That's good. Body needs rest to heal. Violet needs milk. We ain't got any. Goat in the barn. Old, but she gives. Sarah crossed her arms. The gesture was pure defense. We had goats before. Papa sold them for whiskey money. I know how to milk. Then you're better at it than me. She kicks me every time. Almost a smile crossed Sarah's face. Gone so fast, Nate almost missed it. But it had been there. First crack in the armor. She walked halfway to the barn, then stopped, turned back. Her small hands curled into fists at her sides. Mr. Nate, if this is a trick, the words came out hard, practiced, like she'd been rehearsing them all night. Mama might trust you, Emma too, maybe Rose, but I won't, not ever. I'll be watching, always. Nate set down the axe, gave her his full attention. Emma already told me she'd kill me if I hurt any of you. I told her if I hurt you, I'd deserve it, telling you the same. Sarah blinked. She said that she did. And you believed her. 7-year-old who's seen what she's seen. Yeah, I believed her. Something shifted in Sarah's expression. Not trust, but maybe respect. She nodded once, sharp and decisive, then walked to the barn. Nate watched her go. 10 years old and already carrying the weight of the world, eyes that trusted nothing and no one. She reminded him of himself at that age, after his own father's fists had taught him that love and violence could wear the same face. Maybe that's why he'd stopped yesterday. Some debts took a lifetime to pay. He picked up the axe, split another log. The sound rang across the empty prairie like a heartbeat waking up. By noon, the girls had found a rhythm. Sarah milked the goat and fed Violet with a competence that hurt to watch. Emma sat by the fire drawing with a piece of charcoal on scraps of paper Nate had found. Rose followed Nate everywhere, a shadow made of questions and hope. "Can I pet her again?" Rose asked, bouncing beside him. "Gentle like I remember Storm likes me, doesn't she? She does, Miss Rose." "Storm? Why, she's gray, quiet, comes and goes like weather. Can I pet her? Gentle like. She's skittish around loud noises." "I'm always gentle." Rose's face grew serious. "Papa said I was too soft, needed toughening up, said the world would break me if I didn't get hard." Nate stopped walking, knelt down until he was eye level with the 5-year-old. Her eyes were brown and clear, innocent in a way that shouldn't have survived Marcus Brennan's house. "Nothing wrong with gentle, Rose. World's hard enough as it is. Gentle is valuable." "Valuable," she tested the word. "Worth something. Worth a lot, actually." Rose thought about this with the seriousness only children can manage. "Papa said I wasn't worth nothing. Said I was another mouth to feed and nothing more." "Your papa was wrong." "How do you know?" "Because I'm looking at you right now. And I see someone brave enough to love in a house full of hate. That's the hardest thing a person can do." Rose grabbed his hand, small fingers cold from the February air. She pulled him toward the barn with surprising strength. "I like you, Mr. Cowboy." "I like you too, Miss Rose." And for the first time in 6 years, Nate felt something besides grief. Felt like mourning after a long, dark night. Emma never spoke. Nate learned this from Sarah during the midday meal. The 7-year-old hadn't said a word in 3 years, not since Marcus threw her against a wall for crying too loud during supper. Something had broken inside her that day. Not her body, her voice. But Emma's drawing spoke volumes. Nate found the first one on the floor by the fireplace. Stick figures rendered in charcoal, a large figure clearly male with one arm raised, a smaller figure on the ground, 4 tiny figures hiding behind what might have been furniture. No words, none needed. He left it where it was. Didn't comment, just acknowledged with a nod that he'd seen it, understood it. Later, Emma drew another. A cabin with smoke rising from the chimney, 5 figures visible through a window, underneath in shaky letters that showed the effort of someone relearning to write a single word. Safe. Nate picked it up careful, met Emma's eyes, those huge brown eyes that had seen too much. "Yes," he said. "Safe." Emma took the drawing back, held it to her chest, nodded once, then went back to drawing. That night they ate around Eleanor's bed. She couldn't stand yet. The beating had cracked ribs, maybe worse, so they brought supper to her. Beans and cornbread. Simple fare. But the fire was warm and nobody was bleeding, and that counted for something. "Girls," Eleanor said, her voice still rough and painful, "mind your manners." "Thank you, Mr. Nate," all 4 chorused. Even baby Violet seemed to gurgle in agreement. They ate in silence for a while. Comfortable silence. The kind that happens when people are too tired to maintain walls. Then Rose, crumbs on her chin and innocence in her eyes, looked up. "Mr. Cowboy, you got kids?" The silence crashed down like a physical thing. Sarah glared daggers at her sister. Eleanor's breath caught. Emma's charcoal stopped moving. Even the fire seemed to quiet. Nate set his spoon down, slow. Took a breath. He could lie, should lie, keep his grief private like he'd done for 6 years. But something about this moment, these people demanded truth. "Had a son," he said. "Benjamin. Lived 3 days." Rose's eyes went wide. "He in heaven?" "I reckon so." "Is he lonely up there?" "Hope not. His mama's with him. Sarah." Rose nodded, satisfied with this logic. "Then he ain't lonely. Mamas fix everything." The words hit Nate somewhere deep, somewhere he'd locked away 6 years ago. His throat closed. His eyes burned. He blinked hard but couldn't stop the tears that came. First tears since the day he'd buried his wife and son in frozen ground. "Yes, ma'am," he managed. "They do. Good to say their names out loud. Been too long." Sarah started to scold Rose, but Nate held up a hand. "It's all right. Questions are natural. Grief needs air to breathe. Keeping it locked up just makes it rot." Eleanor watched him with her good eye. The other had swollen shut overnight purple and angry. But something in her expression had changed, softened, like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. The silence that followed was different, shared. No longer the silence of strangers, but of people who'd touched the same darkness and survived. Later, after the girls had fallen asleep in a pile by the fire, Eleanor couldn't rest. Neither could Nate. They sat by the dying embers close enough to speak quietly, but not close enough to touch. That distance felt important, safe. "I was a mail-order bride," Eleanor said suddenly. "My papa sold me to Marcus for $50 and a mule. I was 17 years old." Nate said nothing, just listened. Sometimes listening was the only gift worth giving. "I didn't know what marriage meant, not really. Thought it would be like the stories. Love and partnership and building something together." Her laugh came out bitter. "Took me one night to learn different." She pulled the quilt tighter around her shoulders. "Marcus hit me the first time on our wedding night. Said I looked at his brother wrong during the ceremony. Beat me till I couldn't stand, till I couldn't see, till I begged him to stop." Nate's hands gripped his rifle where it lay across his lap, knuckles going white. "Don't be sorry," Eleanor said, seeing his expression. "Be angry. I spent 15 years being sorry. Sorry I wasn't pretty enough. Sorry I wasn't smart enough. Sorry I couldn't give him sons. Sorry got me nothing but more beatings." "I'm angry," Nate said, quiet. "Good." She told him the rest then. 15 years compressed into painful minutes. How every pregnancy brought a temporary reprieve. How Marcus would stop hitting her for a few months hoping for a son. How each daughter's birth brought worse violence than before. How she'd learned to curl around her belly to protect the babies inside. How she'd learned to fall without fighting back, because fighting back only made it worse. "Why didn't you run?" Nate asked, then immediately regretted it. But Eleanor didn't flinch. "Where I got no family, no money, 4 daughters that no man wants. What town welcomes a runaway wife? What law protects her? I checked. Asked around careful. The law says a wife is property. Says a man can discipline his property as he sees fit." She finally looked at him. Really looked. "So I didn't run. I survived. There's a difference. I stopped being Eleanor Ann Whitfield a long time ago, became something else. Something that could take the hits and keep the girls alive. Something hard. Something broken." "You're not broken," Nate said. "You don't know that. I'm looking at you right now, woman who took 15 years of hell and still raised 4 daughters who know how to love, who kept them safe in ways that mattered. That ain't broken. That's steel." Their eyes met, held. 2 broken people seeing each other clearly in the firelight, recognizing the same scars, worn different ways. "My wife Sarah screamed for 2 days while the fever took her," Nate said quietly. "She kept asking for Benjamin, kept asking me to bring the baby. I couldn't tell her he was already dead, couldn't break her heart while it was already breaking." He stared into the dying fire. "I sat there and held her hand and lied. Told her Benjamin was sleeping. Told her he was fine. Told her she'd see him soon, and she died believing it. Died thinking her baby was alive and well. That's mercy not lying. Maybe. Or maybe I was just a coward." "You're not a coward, Nate. Cowards don't ride into town and stop men like Marcus. I didn't do it for noble reasons. Did it because your scream sounded like Sarah's. Because I couldn't save her, but maybe I could save you. That's selfish, not heroic." Eleanor reached out, stopped. Her hand hovered in the space between them. Nate saw her warring with herself. Touch meant vulnerability. Touch meant risk. Touch meant trusting a man again. She pulled her hand back. "I want to believe you're different. Want to believe this is real. But 15 years taught me that kindness always has a price." "Then don't believe. Not yet. Just stay. Heal. Let time do what words can't. And when Marcus comes, then we deal with it together. I don't know how to do together, only know how to survive alone. Neither do I. Maybe we learn." They sat in silence until Eleanor's eyes grew heavy. Nate helped her to bed, careful not to touch more than necessary, respectful of boundaries she hadn't had the privilege to set in 15 years. "Nate," she said as he turned to leave. "Yeah, thank you for seeing me, not as property or broken thing, just as person." He nodded, couldn't speak past the lump in his throat, stepped out into the cold. The next 2 days passed in careful routine. Nate worked outside, giving the family space. Sarah kept watch, slowly relaxing her guard when Nate proved consistent. Emma drew more pictures, each one showing slight hope. The figures in her drawings stood taller, smiled more. Rose chattered endlessly, filling the cabin with sound it had lacked for 6 years. Eleanor healed slowly. The swelling went down enough that both eyes could open. The bruises faded from purple to yellow-green. She started sitting up, then standing, then walking slow laps around the cabin with Sarah's help. Nate taught Sarah to mend leather, showed her how to oil tack so it wouldn't crack in winter, explained the basics of animal husbandry. She absorbed everything like dry earth drinking rain. "Why teach me?" Sarah asked one morning. "I'm just a girl." Some of the best rangers I knew were women. Skill doesn't have a gender, just takes practice and patience. That almost smile crossed her face again, stayed longer this time. On the third day, the wind changed. Nate felt it in his bones before he saw it. The particular stillness that came before Montana blizzards, the way the air pressure dropped, the smell of snow that hadn't fallen yet but would soon. He crossed to the cabin, knocked twice. "Storm coming? Bad one. I'm bringing the goat inside." Sarah opened the door. "Inside where?" "Cabin. Only choice. Storm like this, she'll freeze in the barn." "How long?" Eleanor asked from the bed. 3 days, maybe 4. I've seen worse, but not often. We got enough food and water. Firewood might run low, but I'll stack extra by the door." "You staying in the barn?" "Have to. Storm'll keep the horse calm. She gets spooked by wind." Eleanor sat up straighter, despite the pain. "You'll freeze." "Got blankets. I'll be fine." "You better be." Her voice held an edge he hadn't heard before. Not fear, something else. Something that sounded almost like caring. "The girls are just starting to—" She stopped, shook her head. "Just don't die out there." Nate felt something shift in his chest. Warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. "Yes, ma'am. I'll do my best." He hauled the goat inside despite its bleeding protests. The animal settled in a corner, eyeing the humans with suspicion. Violet started crying. Rose started crying in sympathy. The goat bleated louder. Chaos descended. But it was warm chaos, living chaos, the kind that filled empty spaces with noise and purpose. Nate stepped back outside. The first snowflakes were already falling, big and soft, deceptive. In an hour, they'd be coming sideways. In 3 hours, visibility would be 0. In 6 hours, the cabin would be buried. He looked back through the window, saw Eleanor holding Violet, saw Sarah comforting Rose, saw Emma drawing by firelight, saw his cabin full of life for the first time in 6 years. Then he walked to the barn. Storm nickered in greeting. He settled into the straw with his rifle and blankets. The wind began to howl. Somewhere in town, Marcus Brennan was planning, gathering men, preparing to take back what he considered his property. But between here and there, a storm was building. 4 days of isolation, 4 days of being trapped together, 4 days that would change everything. Nate closed his eyes, listened to the wind, thought about Eleanor's almost touch, about Sarah's almost smile, about Rose's complete trust, about Emma's slowly opening world, about baby Violet, who looked so much like Benjamin it hurt, about the family forming in his cabin whether he'd planned it or not. For the first time in 6 years, Nathaniel Crawford let himself hope. And hope he was learning was more terrifying than grief. The storm hit at midnight. Nate heard it coming, felt it in the way Storm shifted in her stall, in the way the barn timbers creaked, in the sudden drop in temperature that made breath freeze in the air. He pulled his blankets tighter and thought about 5 people sleeping warm in his cabin. Thought about the choice he'd made 3 days ago, the choice that had woken something dead inside him. Outside, the Montana winter screamed. Inside, something fragile and new was learning to breathe, learning to trust, learning that broken people could maybe, just maybe, heal each other if they survived what was coming. The blizzard buried them alive. First night wind tore at the cabin walls like something hungry, something desperate to get in. Nate checked the door every hour, his leg aching from the cold walk between barn and cabin. He packed snow against gaps in the walls to seal out the wind. Inside, the fire burned constant. Outside, the world disappeared into white chaos. 7 people and 1 goat crammed into 2 rooms built for a family that never came. The girls slept tangled together by the hearth like puppies seeking warmth. Eleanor drifted in and out of fever sleep, her body fighting infection from wounds that should have killed her. Baby Violet fussed constantly in the cold. The goat bleated at odd hours, protesting her exile from the barn. Second morning, Nate couldn't see his hand in front of his face outside. White everywhere. No up, no down, no direction. Just howling nothing. He made it to the barn by following the rope he'd strung between buildings the night before. Storm stood calm in her stall. The silence of the horse told him this blizzard had more to give. He fought his way back to the cabin, ice forming in his beard. "How bad?" Eleanor asked from the bed. She'd managed to sit up today. "Progress. Seen worse?" The lie came automatic. Liar. Almost a smile crossed her healing face. First real smile he'd seen from her. "Fine. Ain't seen worse, but we'll make it." Sarah looked up from feeding Violet. "How long?" "Another 2 days, maybe 3. We got food enough, barely." Emma stopped drawing, looked at Nate with those huge eyes that saw everything. She held up her latest picture, the cabin surrounded by white. Inside the window, figures huddled close. Above them, the word, "Together." "Yeah," Nate said softly. "Together." By midday, the cabin felt smaller. Rows bounced off walls, restless energy with nowhere to go. Sarah paced like a caged animal. Instinct screaming at her to protect her family, but having no threat to fight. Emma drew until she ran out of paper, then started drawing on the floor with ash from the fireplace. Only Eleanor stayed still, too hurt to move, too stubborn to complain. Nate found work where he could. Mended harnesses that didn't need mending, sharpened knives already sharp, anything to keep his hands busy, anything to avoid thinking about how close these 5 people had gotten in just 4 days, how their presence filled spaces in his life he'd thought permanently empty. "Teach me something," Sarah said, appearing at his elbow. "Like what?" "Something useful, something that matters." He handed her a leather strap and showed her how to mend it, how to stitch so the repair was stronger than the original. Her hands learned quick, clever fingers, finding the rhythm. "Why are you teaching me this?" she asked after a while. "I'm just a girl. Papa always said girls don't need to know man's work." Nate kept his voice level. "Some of the best rangers I knew were women. Mary Fields carried mail through worse country than this. Calamity Jane could outshoot most men I served with. Skill doesn't have a gender, just takes practice and patience." Sarah's hands stilled. "Really, really, your papa was wrong about a lot of things, that being one of them." Something cracked in Sarah's expression. Not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of it. She went back to stitching with new focus, new purpose. That evening, trapped together with nowhere to hide, the stories started coming. Eleanor asked about Sarah, not her daughter, Nate's wife. And for the first time in 6 years, Nate found himself wanting to talk about her, needing to. "Met her in San Antonio," he said, staring into the fire. "I was 22. She was a school teacher, prettiest thing I ever saw. Had this laugh like bells ringing, made you feel like the world wasn't such a hard place." The girls had gone quiet listening. Even baby Violet seemed to settle. "We married 6 months later, moved up here to start fresh. I had dreams about this ranch, big dreams, horses, cattle, children, was going to build something that mattered, something that would last." "What happened?" Eleanor's voice was gentle. "Winter happened. Sarah got pregnant our first year here, was harder than we expected. Then the baby came early. Samuel, he was so small, like holding a bird, all fragile bones and papery skin." Nate's throat tightened. "Lived 3 days. Just long enough to make us love him forever, just long enough to break our hearts when he stopped breathing. I'm sorry, Eleanor whispered. Sarah got the fever after. Childbed fever, the doctor called it, said there was nothing to be done. I sat with her for 2 days while she burned up. She kept asking for Samuel, kept wanting to hold him. I didn't have the heart to tell her he was already gone. The cabin was silent except for the wind outside and the fire crackling. So I lied, told her Samuel was sleeping, told her she'd see him soon. And she died believing her baby was alive. Died with a smile because she thought she'd get to hold him again in heaven. Tears ran down Nate's face. First time he'd cried telling this story. First time it hurt less to remember than to forget. That's not lying, Eleanor said firmly. That's mercy. That's love. Maybe. Or maybe I was just a coward who couldn't face her pain on top of my own. Eleanor struggled to sit up straighter despite the pain in her ribs. Listen to me, Nathaniel Crawford. I know what cowardice looks like. Lived with it for 15 years. What you did was give your wife peace in her last moments. That's the opposite of cowardice. Their eyes met across the cabin. Understanding passed between them. Two people who'd lost everything, learning they weren't alone in their grief. Rose's small voice broke the moment. Mr. Cowboy, is Sarah in heaven with Benjamin? I reckon so. Then she's happy, because mamas need their babies and babies need their mamas. That's just how it works. Out of the mouths of babes. Wisdom so simple, it cuts straight to truth. Yeah, Miss Rose, Nate managed. That's how it works. The third day dawned gray and cruel. The storm had eased enough to see 20 feet instead of 2. Nate assessed their supplies, food running low, firewood getting scarce. They'd make it another 2 days if they were careful. But careful meant hungry, and these girls had already known too much hunger. I'm going hunting, Nate announced at breakfast. Eleanor's head snapped up. Storm's still going. Eased enough. I've done this 100 times. I'll be fine. Famous last words. He took his rifle and headed into the white. Tracked rabbit prints for an hour before finding one. Clean shot, quick death. He was heading back when he heard the sound. Low rumbling, too deep for wind, too close for distant thunder. The grizzly came out of nowhere. Bears were supposed to be hibernating in February, supposed to be deep in caves sleeping through winter. But this one was awake, thin, starving, desperate. And Nate was between it and the rabbit carcass. He fired. The shot took the bear in the shoulder. Should have scared it off. Instead, it charged. Nate got off one more round before 700 pounds of rage and hunger hit him like a freight train. He went down hard, rifle flying. The bear's claws raked his left leg from hip to knee. Deep, bone deep. The pain was white fire and black ice all at once. He managed to grab his pistol, put 3 rounds into the bear's chest at point-blank range. It roared, staggered, fell, and didn't move again. Nate lay in the snow leg, screaming, blood turning the white ground red. He tried to stand. His leg wouldn't hold him. He looked down and immediately wished he hadn't. The gash was 8 inches long, deep enough to see things that should stay hidden, deep enough that walking was impossible. He pulled his belt off, wrapped it around his thigh as a tourniquet, pulled it tight enough to make his vision gray. The bleeding slowed, but didn't stop. 2 miles to the cabin. Might as well be 200. He started crawling. Snow soaked through his clothes. Cold bit at exposed skin. His leg left a red trail behind him like some kind of grotesque breadcrumb path. He used his rifle as a crutch, but the snow was too deep, the angle too awkward. His mind started to drift, pain and cold doing their work. He called for Sarah, called for Benjamin, called for his mother who died when he was 10. Somehow, inch by bloody inch, he made it to the cabin door. His last conscious thought was knocking, hoping someone would hear, hoping he hadn't come this far just to die on his own doorstep. The door opened. Sarah screamed. Eleanor appeared behind her daughter, face going white. But her voice came out steady. 15 years of crisis had taught her how to act when everything fell apart. Sarah, get me hot water, needle thread, and whiskey. Now, Emma, I need clean rags, all of them. Rose, you keep Violet quiet. Move. The girls scattered like soldiers receiving orders. Eleanor knelt beside Nate in the snow. Her hands shook as she reached for him, touching a man, touching male skin, every instinct screaming danger. But this was Nate. This was different. She grabbed under his arms and dragged him inside. He outweighed her by 80 pounds, and she'd barely healed from broken ribs. But adrenaline and desperation made her strong. She got him to the bed. Her bed, the only bed. Started cutting away his pants leg with a kitchen knife. The wound was worse than she'd feared. Gaping. Still bleeding despite the tourniquet. She could see muscle, could see bone, could see things no person should see inside another person's body. Sarah appeared with the supplies. Her face was pale but set. She'd seen blood before, too much of it. "Hold him down," Eleanor said. "This is going to hurt." She poured whiskey into the wound. Nate's back arched off the bed. He screamed, a sound of pure animal agony, but he didn't fight them. Some part of him knew they were trying to help. Eleanor threaded the needle with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. This was different from mending clothes. This was flesh. This was life or death. One mistake and he'd bleed out. One mistake, and the man who'd saved them would die. She took a breath, steadied herself, started stitching. Her tears fell as she worked. Mixing with blood on her hands, 15 years of being hurt, 15 years of having medicine withheld as punishment. And here she was doing the thing no one had ever done for her, healing instead of harming. "You can't die," she whispered as she stitched. "You can't leave us. Not yet. We just found you." The realization hit her like a physical blow. She needed him, not just for protection, not just for shelter, for him, for the way he looked at her like she mattered, for the way he treated her daughters like people instead of property, for the way he made her remember she was Eleanor Ann before she was a victim. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't leave me alone again." Sarah held Nate's shoulders down. Emma brought more rags. Rose stood by Violet's cradle singing soft to keep the baby calm. All of them working together, all of them fighting to save the one person who'd fought for them. Eleanor finished the last stitch, 37 in total. She bandaged the leg tight, checked the tourniquet. The bleeding had stopped, but Nate had lost so much blood. Too much. His fever spiked that night, stayed high for 2 days. He was delirious most of the time. Called for Sarah, called for Benjamin. Relived moments from his past in fractured sentences that broke Eleanor's heart. She stayed by his bedside, kept cold compresses on his forehead, made him drink water when he was conscious enough to swallow. The girls took shifts. Sarah stood guard at the door with Nate's rifle. Emma drew pictures and left them by his bedside like prayers. Rose held his hand and talked to him about everything and nothing, told him stories. Told him he had to wake up because she hadn't finished telling him about all the animals she wanted to raise when she grew up. Even baby Violet seemed quieter, like she knew, like even at 1 week old she understood that the man in the bed mattered. On the 5th day, the storm finally broke. Nate woke to sunlight streaming through gaps in the boarded windows. His leg was on fire, but his head was clear. Eleanor sat in a chair beside the bed, head tilted back, mouth open, finally sleeping after 3 days of vigil. She looked exhausted, beautiful and exhausted. Bruises on her face had faded to yellow, split lip nearly healed. But new shadows lived under her eyes. He tried to sit up, failed. The movement woke Eleanor. She jolted awake, hand going defensive before she saw him, saw his eyes open and clear. "You're awake." Relief flooded her voice. "Thank God you're awake. What happened? Bear, you almost died. We saved you." The memories came back in pieces. The attack, the crawl, the pain, and Eleanor's hands on him, sewing him back together, saving his life. "You saved me," he said. "You saved us first. That's different." "How?" "I chose to. You were forced to." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Don't you dare diminish what I did. Don't you dare make it about obligation. I saved you because I wanted to. Because the thought of you dying made me realize something." "What?" She took a breath, steadied herself. "That I'm not dead inside anymore. That somewhere in the last 5 days I started feeling again, started hoping again. And that terrifies me more than Marcus ever did." Their eyes locked. Something passed between them. Something neither had words for yet. "I was stupid," Nate said finally. "Going out in that storm. Could have gotten killed and left you all defenseless. I'm sorry." You were trying to feed us. That's not stupid. That's—" She struggled for words. "That's what family does." There it was again. Family. The word she'd used while stitching his wound, the word that changed everything. "Family," Nate repeated. "Yeah, if you want. If that's—" Eleanor's courage faltered. "I don't know the rules for this. Don't know how to be with someone who doesn't hurt me." "Neither do I. Lost the only person who taught me what love looked like. So we figure it out together. Together." The cabin door burst open. Maggie Thompson stood there, snow-covered and breathing hard. "Thank God you're alive. All of you." She looked around, taking in Nate. In bed, Eleanor beside him, the girls clustered close. "I came as soon as the storm broke. Brought supplies and news. Neither good." "What news?" Nate tried to sit up again. Failed again. "Marcus has been to every saloon, every cattle camp, every mining post within 50 miles. He's hiring men, 20, maybe more, and he's coming. Tomorrow or the day after, he's coming to take back what he calls his." Eleanor's hand found Nate's, gripped tight. "We knew he would." "There's more." Maggie pulled papers from her coat. "Reverend Hayes grew a spine. Stole these from the sheriff's office. Doctor's testimony. Real one, not the lie Marcus paid for. Says the violence during pregnancy caused the problems. Says Marcus knew. There's also witness statements from 3 women in town." She laid them on the bed. "This is evidence. Real evidence. Enough to put Marcus away if we can get it to federal court." "Judge Sullivan," Nate said. "Fort Benton, he's a federal judge. Old ranger buddy of mine. Can you send for him? Roads are watched. Marcus has men everywhere." "Not everywhere." Maggie's smile was grim. "Tommy Red Cloud knows back trails. Half Crow boy, 16 years old. Owes you for saving his sister last year. He'll ride." Hope flickered in Eleanor's eyes. "How long until the judge can get here? 3 days if Tommy rides fast? 2 if he rides like the devil. And Marcus, tomorrow. Maybe day after." Nate looked at his bandaged leg. Tried to flex it. Pain shot through him so sharp his vision grayed. "I can't fight like this." "Then we fight together," Eleanor said. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "I learned to shoot once. Can learn again." Sarah stepped forward from the shadows. "I can help too." "Sarah, no," Eleanor started. "Mama, I'm 10 years old. I seen things, done things. If we're fighting, I'm fighting. Rather die on my feet than go back to Papa's house." The determination in her young face broke something in Nate. Or maybe fixed it. He looked at this family that wasn't his by blood, but was his by choice. Saw the strength they'd found together, saw what they could be if they survived. "All right," he said. "Maggie, send Tommy. We'll hold out till Judge Sullivan gets here." That night, after Maggie left and the girls finally slept, Eleanor helped Nate to the porch. He needed crutches, but he could move. Barely. They sat in the cold looking at stars emerging from the storm clouds. "I'm scared, Nate," Eleanor whispered. "Me too. What if the judge doesn't come in time? Then we fight with what we got. What if we lose? Then we lose together. But I ain't giving you back to him, Eleanor. I'd rather die." She turned to face him. In the moonlight, with her bruises faded and her eyes clear, she looked like someone new, someone strong, someone who'd survived hell and come out the other side. "I've been fighting alone for 15 years, she said. "I don't want to be alone anymore." She reached out, took his hand. Her choice, her decision. "You're not alone. Not ever again." Eleanor leaned in, kissed him. Soft at first, tentative, both of them trembling like leaves in wind. First kiss for both since their spouses died. First kiss that tasted like hope instead of grief. When they pulled apart, Nate's eyes were wet. "I love you, Eleanor Ann. I love you too, Nathaniel Crawford." Inside the cabin, Sarah watched from the window. Her face was unreadable, but she didn't object, didn't interfere, just watched. Always watching, always protecting. The storm had passed, the wound was healing. Love had found them in the wreckage. But Marcus Brennan was coming with an army, and Nate could barely walk. How could they possibly survive what came next? Dawn came cold and clear. The world outside was white and pristine, like the storm had wiped the slate clean. But Nate knew better. Storms didn't cleanse. They only buried things, and what was buried had a way of digging itself back out. He sat on the porch leg, propped up, rifle across his lap. The wound throbbed with every heartbeat, but he'd survived worse. Would survive this too. Had to. 5 people were counting on him. The sound of hoofbeats brought his hand to the rifle, but it was Reverend Michael Hayes riding up alone, looking over his shoulder like a man being chased by ghosts or guilt. "Reverend," Nate said, not standing. Couldn't stand easy yet. Hayes dismounted, tied his horse with shaking hands. He was 55 years old and looked 70 this morning. Dark circles under his eyes, clothes disheveled, the look of a man who hadn't slept in days. "Mr. Crawford, I need to speak with you. With Mrs. Brennan, too, if she's able." "She's inside. Say your piece here first." Hayes pulled papers from inside his coat, held them out like they burned his hands. "I've been a coward for 30 years, preached about Christian charity every Sunday while watching Eleanor Brennan get beaten in the street. Told myself it wasn't my place to interfere, that God would sort it out." His voice cracked. "I was wrong. God sorts things out through people willing to act, and I've been too afraid to be one of those people." Nate took the papers, started reading. His hands began to shake. "Where did you get these? Sheriff Davis's desk. He doesn't know I took them." "Probably doesn't know they exist. Marcus has been paying him to look the other way for years." The first document was a medical report, doctor's handwriting barely legible, but the words were clear enough. Patient Eleanor Brennan. Examination following 4th birth. Evidence of repeated trauma during all pregnancies, blunt force trauma to abdomen. Broken ribs healed incorrectly. Internal scarring consistent with sustained violence. Patient informed that continued violence during pregnancy significantly increases risk of miscarriage and infant mortality. Likelihood of male child reduced by physical trauma to reproductive system. Nate's jaw clenched so hard his teeth hurt. He knew. Marcus knew. "There's more." Hayes pointed to the second page. A letter. Marcus's father's handwriting. "Son, the doctor has informed me of the situation. I understand your frustration regarding the lack of male heir. However, continued violence against Eleanor during her delicate condition only worsens your chances. I suggest you exercise restraint during pregnancies if you wish to achieve the desired outcome. After birth, of course, discipline may resume as you see fit." "Your father, 15 years, Nate said, voice barely controlled. 15 years he blamed her, called her cursed, beat her for something he caused." "The third document," Hayes said quietly. "Witness statements. 3 women from Broken Ridge, all describing beatings they'd witnessed, dates, times, injuries. One woman had seen Marcus break Eleanor's arm, another had watched him kick her until she vomited blood. The third had found Eleanor unconscious in the street and helped her home, only to be threatened by Marcus to keep silent. All 3 had been too terrified to speak up while Marcus held power. But fear was turning to anger, and anger was finding its voice. The cabin door opened. Eleanor stood there, wrapped in a quilt face, still healing but stronger now. She'd heard everything. "Let me see them," she said. Nate hesitated. "Eleanor, you don't need to—" "Let me see them." He handed her the papers, watched her read, watched her face go white, then red, then something beyond color, something raw and broken, and finally angry. Her hands started shaking, not from fear this time, from rage. She read the letter from Marcus's father twice, 3 times. Then she screamed. The sound came from somewhere deep, 15 years deep, a scream that held every blow, every broken bone, every night she'd thought about not waking up. A scream that said she was done being quiet, done being sorry, done accepting that this was just how life worked. She threw the papers down, grabbed a plate from the table, hurled it at the wall. It shattered. She grabbed another, threw it harder. He knew, her voice was raw. All those years, all those beatings. He knew it was him. Sarah appeared in the doorway, eyes wide. Emma behind her, clutching Rose. They'd never seen their mother like this, had never heard her raise her voice above a whisper. "He called me cursed," Eleanor continued, grabbing a cup, now smashing it. "Said I was barren of sons by God's judgment, but it was him, his fists, his boots, his—" She couldn't finish. Rage stole her words. Nate pulled himself up on his crutches, crossed to her, didn't try to stop her, didn't try to calm her, just stood there, present, steady. "Break it all if you need to," he said quiet. "Rage earned is rage deserved." Eleanor grabbed another plate, stopped. Her whole body was shaking. She looked at Nate with eyes that held 15 years of pain finally finding outlet. "I want him to pay," she whispered. "Not just jail. I want him to suffer like we suffered. Want him to feel every hit, every scar, every night I thought I'd die." "I know. I want him dead, Nate. God help me, I want him dead." "That's natural. That's human. Is it wrong?" "No, but acting on it might be." Eleanor's face crumpled. The rage drained out as fast as it came, leaving only exhaustion. She sank to the floor. Nate lowered himself beside her legs, screaming in protest, pulled her against his chest. Let her cry, let her rage, let her feel everything she'd buried for 15 years. The girls stayed in the doorway, watching their mother break, watching her be put back together by a man who didn't use his hands for hitting. Reverend Hayes stood awkward in the corner, holding his hat, witnessing the wreckage his cowardice had helped create. When Eleanor finally quieted, Nate spoke. "This evidence is enough. Federal judge sees this, Marcus goes to prison for 20 years, minimum." "If the judge gets here in time," Eleanor said against his chest, "Judge Sullivan will come. He owes me his life. When a ranger calls in that debt, you come running." Hayes cleared his throat. "There's more help coming. I spoke to people in town, quiet-like. Folks are tired of Marcus Brennan acting like he owns the territory. 6 people said they'd stand with you if it comes to it." "Who?" "Maggie Thompson, you know. Clara Jennings, the widow rancher to the east. She's a crack shot and mean as a snake when riled. The blacksmith, John Two Rivers. The school teacher, Miss Patricia Walsh. Young Tommy Red Cloud, though he's already riding to Fort Benton. And me." Nate looked at the Reverend, really looked. Saw a man trying to make amends. Saw guilt eating him alive. Saw someone who'd found his spine too late but was trying anyway. "You know how to shoot. I was a soldier before I was a preacher, sharpshooter in the war." "Which side? Does it matter anymore?" "No, reckon it doesn't." That afternoon they came, one by one, allies assembling. Maggie Thompson arrived first with supplies, food, ammunition, medical supplies. She hugged Eleanor like a daughter crying over the evidence she'd read. "I knew it was bad," Maggie said. "But seeing it written down, seeing proof he knew all along, that man is going to hell, and I hope the devil takes his time." Clara Jennings came next. 40 years old, weather-worn with eyes like flint, and a rifle that looked like part of her arm. Her husband had died 3 years back. She'd run the ranch alone since. Took no nonsense from anyone. "Heard you were making a stand," she said to Nate. "Figured you could use another gun. Appreciate it. Don't thank me yet. I'm doing this for her." She nodded at Eleanor. "Any woman survives what she survived deserves better than to be dragged back." John Two Rivers, the blacksmith, came at sunset. Cheyenne and Irish built like a bear with hands that could bend horseshoes and a quiet manner that hid steel underneath. "Marcus Brennan owes me money," he said. "Figured this was as good a way as any to collect." Miss Patricia Walsh, the school teacher, arrived last. 28 years old, Eastern educated with a Derringer in her purse and fire in her eyes. "I taught Sarah for 2 years," she said. "Watched her come to school with bruises and fear in her eyes. Watched her protect her sisters. That child deserves better. They all do." They gathered in the cabin as darkness fell. War council around the table, Nate at the head despite his injury, Eleanor beside him, the allies arranged around them. "Marcus is coming tomorrow or the day after," Nate said. "He'll bring 20 men, maybe more. Hired guns mostly. Men who'll do anything for money. Our advantage is we're defending. We know the ground, and we're fighting for something that matters." "What's the plan?" Clara asked. "Board the windows, create firing positions, stock ammunition, set up escape routes in case we get overrun." He looked at Eleanor. "You and the girls have a fallback position. Root cellar 50 yards behind the barn. You get there, you hide. You don't come out no matter what you hear." "I'm not hiding," Eleanor said. "Eleanor, no." Her voice was firm. "I'm done hiding. Done running. I can shoot. You taught me. And I'll be damned if I let other people fight my battle while I cower in a cellar." "It's not cowering. It's being smart. It's being a victim. I'm not a victim anymore, Nate. I'm a survivor. And survivors fight back. Their eyes locked, a battle of wills. But Nate saw something in her face that made him back down. This was important to her. This was her reclaiming power Marcus had stolen. "All right," he said finally, "but you stay inside. Good cover. And if I say, run, you run. Deal. Deal." They worked through the night, boarding windows, loading rifles. Clara taught Eleanor to shoot properly, not just point and pull the trigger. Maggie organized supplies. Hayes cleaned weapons with the practiced efficiency of a man who remembered war. Sarah insisted on learning, too. At 10 years old, she could barely hold the rifle steady, but her determination was absolute. "Just in case?" she said when Eleanor protested. "Just in case everything goes wrong." Emma drew, always drawing. But her pictures now showed 5 figures standing together against darkness. Unity in the face of threat. Rose kept Violet quiet, singing soft songs, telling stories, being the sunshine even as storm clouds gathered. Near midnight, Nate and Eleanor found themselves alone on the porch. The Allies had settled in the barn to sleep. The girls were finally down, just the two of them and the Montana stars. "I'm scared," Eleanor said quietly. "Me too. What if Judge Sullivan doesn't come in time? Then we fight with what we've got. What if we lose? Then we lose together. But I made you a promise, Eleanor. I ain't giving you back to him. I'd rather die." She turned to face him. The moonlight caught her features, the healing bruises, the strength that had always been there but was only now showing through. "I've been fighting alone for 15 years, she said. "Fighting to survive, fighting to protect my girls. I'm tired, Nate, bone tired. The kind that makes you think about not waking up." "Don't talk like that. It's the truth. Only thing that kept me going was them." She looked back at the cabin where her daughters slept. "They deserved better than me, better than what I could give." "You're wrong. Those girls got the strongest mother I've ever seen. You survived 15 years of hell and kept them safe, kept them loving. That's not weakness, that's steel. Steel bends. And it don't break. That's the point." Eleanor reached out, took his hand. Her choice, her decision. They'd come so far in just 10 days, from strangers to something neither had words for yet. "I love you," she said. Simple, direct, true. "I love you too, Eleanor Ann." She kissed him, deeper than before, less tentative. A kiss that said she was choosing him, choosing this, choosing life over survival. When they pulled apart, both were crying. Happy tears, scared tears, all of it mixed together. "If we survive this," Eleanor said, "I want to marry you." Nate's breath caught. "That a proposal? Maybe. You accepting?" "Yes, 100 times yes." They held each other as the stars wheeled overhead, two broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage, who'd learned that broken pieces could fit together and make something new, something strong. 3 in the morning, Nate woke to the smell of smoke. He grabbed his crutches, hobbled to the window, orange glow on the eastern horizon. Too big for a campfire, too bright for lantern light. "Fire," he said. Clara Jennings was already up, rifle in hand. "That's coming from town, from Maggie's place." They watched the glow grow, watched it light the night sky, watched it burn. "He's sending a message," Nate said. "Or eliminating allies," Clara replied. By dawn, Maggie rode back to the ranch, soot-covered, exhausted, alive, but everything else gone. Her house had burned to the ground. 60 years of memories turned to ash. "Marcus," she said simply, "him and 4 men, caught me sleeping, set the fire and rode off laughing. You get anything out?" "Just myself and this." She held up a small wooden box. "My husband's wedding ring, my daughter's baby shoes. That's all that's left." Eleanor pulled the older woman into a hug. 2 women who'd lost everything finding strength in each other. "You'll stay with us," Eleanor said, "for as long as you need. Might be forever. Got nowhere else to go. Then forever it is. That's what family does." That word again. Family. Growing to include anyone who stood together. Anyone who fought back against the Marcus Brennans of the world. Nate looked at the assembled group. 6 adults, 4 children. Against 20 hired guns and a man with nothing left to lose, the odds were terrible, the chances slim. But they had something Marcus didn't. They had purpose, had love, had each other. "He'll come today," Nate said. "Maybe this afternoon, maybe at sunset, but he'll come. And when he does, we show him what happens when good people finally stop being afraid." They spent the morning preparing, every rifle loaded, every position fortified, every angle covered. Eleanor practiced shooting until her shoulder ached. Sarah learned to reload faster. Emma drew maps of sight lines and firing positions with strategic brilliance. Rose kept Violet calm and safe. The Allies checked weapons, shared stories, became a unit instead of individuals. And Nate watched it all from the porch, watched his broken life fill with purpose, watched strangers become family, watched Eleanor transform from victim to warrior. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Noon came and went. The sun climbed high and started its descent. Tension built with every passing hour. 3 o'clock, Clara spotted riders on the horizon. 22 men, she called down. Marcus in front, Sheriff Davis beside him. Rest our hired guns by the look of them. Nate pulled himself up, legs still weak, but he could stand, could fight if needed, would fight. No choice now. Eleanor appeared beside him, rifle in her hands, fear in her eyes but determination in her jaw. "Whatever happens," she said, "thank you for seeing me, for saving us, for giving me one moment of real love before the end." "This ain't the end," Nate said. "This is where we start fighting back." The riders stopped at the property line. Marcus Brennan sat his horse like a king, surveying his domain. Sheriff Davis looked uncomfortable, but stayed silent. The hired guns looked bored. Just another job, another payday. Marcus's voice carried across the distance. "Crawford sent out my wife and daughters. Do it now, and I'll let you live. Refuse, and we burn that ranch with everyone in it." Nate stepped forward. "She's not your wife anymore, Marcus, and those girls deserve better than you. The law says different. Federal law says I can protect victims of violence. And that's exactly what I'm doing." Marcus laughed. "You and what army? I count 6 guns in there. Maybe 7 if you're teaching children to shoot. I got 22. You really want to do this math? Numbers don't mean much when you're fighting for the wrong side." "Right and wrong," Marcus spat. "That's rich coming from a man who kidnapped another man's family. Saved them. There's a difference. Not to the law." The cabin door opened. Eleanor stepped out, rifle in her hands, eyes hard as winter ice. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice carried clear and strong. 15 years you told me what to do. 15 years you beat me for not being what you wanted. Not anymore." She raised the rifle. Marcus's horse shied. He barely kept his seat. "You come near me or my daughters again," Eleanor continued, "and I will kill you. Not because I'm angry, because you're a threat, and threats get eliminated." Marcus's face went red. "That's my wife, talking like a killer. See what you've done to her, Crawford. I've done nothing. She found her voice all on her own. I just gave her space to use it." The standoff held, 22 against 7, but the 7 stood together, united, strong. Then from the ridge behind the cabin, more riders appeared. Judge Robert Sullivan, 2 federal marshals, and young Tommy Red Cloud, who'd ridden like the devil himself, was chasing him. The judge's voice boomed across the distance. "Marcus Brennan, by the authority of the Federal Territorial Court, I'm placing you under arrest for aggravated assault fraud abuse resulting in bodily harm and arson. You have the right to answer these charges in court, but make no mistake, you're coming with me." Marcus's world crumbled in an instant. His hired guns started backing away. Sheriff Davis suddenly found his boots fascinating. Everything he'd built on fear and violence fell apart when faced with real authority. "This isn't over," Marcus said. But it was, and everyone there knew it. The war wasn't finished. The final battle still lay ahead. But for the first time in 15 years, Eleanor Brennan felt something she'd forgotten existed: hope. The sun rose blood red over Montana territory. Nate had been awake since 3, watching, waiting. His leg throbbed where the bear had torn it open, but pain was just noise now, background static to the real symphony building on the horizon. They were coming. He could feel it in his bones, in the way the air pressure changed, in the way Storm shifted restless in her stall, in the absolute stillness that came before violence. Eleanor appeared beside him as first light touched the prairie. She'd been up all night too, loading rifles, checking positions, transforming from victim to soldier with a speed that would have been terrifying if it wasn't so necessary. "Today," she said, not a question. "Today." She checked her rifle for the 10th time. Her hands were steady now, no more shaking. Fear had burned away in the furnace of rage and purpose, leaving something harder behind, something that could pull a trigger without hesitation. "I'm not the woman he married," she said quietly. "No, you're better." "I'm dangerous." "Good. Dangerous women survive. Docile ones get buried." She looked at him, really looked, saw past the injury and the exhaustion to the man underneath, the broken ranger who'd saved her, not because he was whole, but because he was broken in ways that matched her own fractures. "If I kill him today," Eleanor said, "will you still love me?" "Yes." "Even if I like it?" "Especially then." She kissed him, hard and desperate. A kiss that tasted like goodbye and hello, all mixed together. When they pulled apart, both had tears on their faces. "Whatever happens," Eleanor whispered, "you gave me something I thought was dead. You gave me hope. Thank you for that. Don't talk like we're dying." "But if we are..." "We're not." Nate gripped her shoulders, made her meet his eyes. "We're going to survive this. Going to raise those girls. Going to build something that lasts. You hear me?" She nodded. Didn't believe him, but nodded anyway. Behind them, the Allies assembled. Clara Jennings checking her rifle with the efficiency of long practice. Maggie Thompson, 60 years old, and mad as hell about her burned house. Reverend Hayes looking like a man who'd found his backbone too late, but would use it anyway. John Two Rivers, the blacksmith, silent and solid as stone. Miss Patricia Walsh with her Derringer and Eastern education. 6 adults, 4 children, against what was coming. The odds were terrible, but they'd faced terrible before. 7 o'clock, Clara called down from the loft. "Riders coming, 22 count, Marcus in front." Sarah appeared at Nate's elbow, 10 years old, with her mother's eyes and a determination that broke his heart. She held a rifle almost as big as she was. "I can shoot," she said. "I know. If they get past you, I'll protect Mama and the girls." "Sarah, don't tell me I'm too young. I've been old since I was 5. "This is just what I do." Nate looked at this child who'd never been allowed to be a child, who'd been protector and parent and survivor before she learned to read. And he saw himself at that age, saw the same hard eyes, the same acceptance of violence as reality instead of aberration. "You're the bravest person I know," he said. "I'm just doing what needs doing." That's what brave is. Something flickered in Sarah's face, not quite a smile, but close. She took her position by the window, rifle ready, eyes sharp. Emma sat in the corner with her drawings, not hiding, documenting, creating a visual record of this day for some future that might not come. Rose held baby Violet singing soft songs to keep the infant calm. Even at 5 years old, she understood her role, understood that sometimes the best thing you could do was be the light in the darkness. The riders stopped at the property line. 22 men on horseback. Marcus Brennan in the center, like some kind of dark king. Sheriff Davis beside him, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The hired guns fanned out. Bored faces. Just another job. Another payday for pointing weapons at people. But something was different in Marcus today. Nate saw it immediately. The man had the look of someone with nothing left to lose. Dangerous look. Desperate look. Marcus's voice carried across the frozen ground. "Crawford, I know you're in there. Send out my wife and daughters. Do it now, and maybe I let you live." Nate stepped onto the porch. His leg screamed protest, but he made it look easy, made it look like he wasn't hurt at all. Never show weakness to predators. First rule of survival. "She's not your wife anymore, Marcus. Those papers you're so proud of, federal court's going to invalidate them. Fraud, coercion, abuse, take your pick. You got no authority here. Don't need authority. Got truth, got witnesses, got evidence that says you knew all along what you were doing to her, to those babies." Marcus's face went red. Lies, all lies from a whore and a kidnapper. The cabin door opened. Eleanor stepped out. She'd changed in the 10 days since Nate had pulled her from the street. The swelling was gone, the bruises faded, but it was more than physical healing. Something fundamental had shifted inside her. The broken woman was gone. In her place stood someone Nate barely recognized, someone who'd found her spine. Eleanor raised her rifle, pointed it straight at Marcus's chest. The entire assembled crowd went silent. "Hello, husband," she said. Her voice carried clear and cold across the distance. 15 years you told me what to do, told me I was worthless, told me I was cursed, told me every beating was my fault for not giving you sons. Marcus's horse shifted nervous under him. "Eleanor, put that down before you hurt yourself. I'm done hurting myself, done taking hurt from you, done with all of it," she fired. The shot tore through the morning air like thunder. The bullet passed so close to Marcus's head it parted his hair. His horse reared. He barely kept his seat. "Next one goes between your eyes," Eleanor said. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. "I spent 15 years afraid of you, spent 15 years thinking I deserved what you did. Not anymore, Marcus. I'm not afraid. And I'm a damn good shot now." Nate felt something swell in his chest. Pride. Pure pride. This was Eleanor reclaiming herself. Taking back power. Marcus had stolen piece by piece over 15 years. The hired guns started murmuring, shifting in their saddles. They'd signed up to intimidate a rancher and collect some runaways. Nobody had said anything about a woman who could shoot. About a woman who looked like she'd welcomed the excuse to kill. Sheriff Davis cleared his throat. "Mrs. Brennan, please lower your weapon. You're only making this worse." Eleanor laughed. Bitter sound. Years of pain compressed into that laugh. Worse than 15 years of broken bones, worse than having my babies damaged before they were born, worse than wanting to die every single day." She pulled papers from her pocket, the evidence Hayes had stolen, threw them at Marcus's feet. "I got the doctor's real testimony, got your father's letters proving you knew, got witness statements from 3 women in town. You want to talk about worse, Marcus? Let's talk about what's coming for you." Marcus's face went white, then red, then something beyond color. Calculation and rage mixing into something dangerous. "That's theft. Illegal evidence. Federal court don't care how we got it, just that we got it." Movement on the ridge behind the cabin caught everyone's attention. More riders appearing against the dawn sky. Judge Robert Sullivan, 2 federal marshals, Tommy Red Cloud, who'd ridden 3 days straight to bring them. Hope bloomed in Nate's chest. They'd made it. By God, they'd actually made it. Judge Sullivan's voice boomed across the prairie. "Marcus Brennan, by the authority of the Federal Territorial Court of Montana Territory, I'm placing you under arrest for aggravated assault, fraud, abuse resulting in bodily harm, and arson." Marcus's world crumbled. Nate saw it happen, saw the moment the man realized his power was gone. His influence meaningless, his threats empty. The hired guns started backing their horses away. They weren't paid enough for federal charges. Sheriff Davis looked like he wanted to melt into the ground. But Marcus didn't surrender, didn't accept. Men like him never did. His hand went to his pistol. "Nobody's taking me anywhere." His voice cracked with desperation. "Nobody." He drew. Faster than Nate expected, faster than a man his age should move. The pistol came up, aimed not at the judge or the marshals, aimed at Eleanor. Time slowed. Nate saw it happening, saw Marcus's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Eleanor frozen rifle still pointed, but not fast enough to stop what was coming. Nate launched himself off the porch, threw his body between Eleanor and the gun. His wounded leg gave out, but momentum carried him forward. He crashed into Eleanor, knocking her sideways. The pistol fired. Sarah screamed. Not in fear, in fury. She'd been watching from the window, saw Marcus draw, saw Nate jump. And in that split second, 10 years old with a rifle too big for her, she made a choice. She shoved the door open, threw herself at Nate, small body hitting his injured leg. The impact sent him sprawling sideways instead of forward. The bullet that should have hit Nate's chest hit the porch post instead. Wood exploded. Splinters flew. Sarah landed in the snow, looked up at Marcus. Her father, the man who'd beaten her mother, who'd made her childhood a nightmare. And she spoke with a voice that belonged to someone much older. "You missed," she said. "You always said I was worthless, but I just saved them both." What does that make you? Marcus's face twisted. He raised the pistol again, aimed at his own daughter. 3 rifles cracked simultaneously, but they didn't come from the cabin, didn't come from Nate or the allies. They came from behind Marcus. 3 townspeople. The blacksmith whose sister Marcus had hurt, the schoolteacher who'd taught his daughters and seen their fear, the young woman whose own sister had died from injuries Marcus inflicted years ago. Community justice. Not heroes, not saviors, just people who'd been complicit through silence and were done being quiet. 3 shots, shoulder, hip, leg, deliberate, precise, meant to stop, not kill. Marcus fell from his horse, hit the frozen ground hard, screamed, not in pain, in rage and disbelief that this was happening to him, that the natural order he'd built his life on was collapsing. Nate struggled to his feet, leg giving out. Sarah grabbed his arm, helped steady him, 10 years old, and she was helping him stand. "You all right?" he asked. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. You saved my life." "You saved ours first. That's what family does." Family. That word again. She'd said it so casual, like it was fact instead of hope, like somewhere in the past 10 days she'd decided Nate was hers and she was his. His throat closed, eyes burned. "Yeah, sweetheart, that's what family does." Eleanor appeared beside them, shaking now that the danger had passed. She pulled Sarah into a fierce hug. Then Nate. Then all 3 of them stood there holding each other while the world rearranged itself around them. The federal marshals dismounted, moved toward Marcus with rope and iron. He tried to fight, tried to threaten, but he was bleeding and beaten, and his hired guns had scattered. His power was smoke. His threats were wind. Judge Sullivan walked to where Marcus lay, looked down at him with disgust that needed no words. "I've read the evidence, Brennan. Read every page, every witness statement, every medical report. You're going to trial, and when you're convicted, you're going to prison for a very long time." "I want my lawyer." Marcus spat blood. "You'll get one, in federal court, where your money and your name mean nothing, where judges actually care about justice instead of whose pocket they're in." The marshals lifted Marcus, shackled him, led him to a horse. He screamed threats the whole way, promised he'd kill them all, promised he'd burn everything. But his threats were empty. Everyone knew it. The monster had been defanged. Sheriff Davis sat his horse frozen, didn't help, didn't hinder, just watched his world fall apart. "Davis," Judge Sullivan said, "you're done. Badge on my desk by sunset, or I'll have you arrested as accessory." The sheriff's hand shook as he unpinned his badge, held it out. Clara Jennings rode forward, took it from his hand. "I'll be taking this," she said. "Town needs a sheriff who actually protects people. Figured I'd give it a try." Davis rode away. Broken man. Complicit man. Man who'd chosen comfort over courage and was paying the price. The townspeople who'd shot Marcus dismounted, approached the cabin slow, scared of retribution, scared of judgment for waiting so long. The blacksmith spoke first. "We're sorry. Should have done this years ago. Should have stood up when it mattered." "You're standing up now," Eleanor said. "That's what counts. We let you suffer. You ended it. That's enough." The schoolteacher stepped forward. "We want to testify. At the trial. Want to make sure he never hurts anyone again." "Thank you." Eleanor's voice broke. "Thank you for finally seeing us." The young woman, maybe 19, knelt in the snow. "My sister Mary, Marcus killed her 3 years ago, beat her so bad she never woke up. Sheriff said it was an accident, said she fell, but we knew, we all knew." Eleanor knelt beside her, took her hands. 2 women connected by Marcus Brennan's violence, 2 survivors seeing each other. "I'm sorry about Mary," Eleanor said. "I'm sorry I didn't save you sooner. You saved me today. That matters." They held each other, cried together, released years of pain and guilt and rage into the Montana morning. Nate watched it all from the porch, watched community find its conscience, watched justice happen not from heroes but from ordinary people who'd finally had enough. Judge Sullivan approached, old friend, old ranger buddy, man who'd once been pinned down by Comanche raiders while Nate had ridden 12 hours to pull him out. "You look like hell, Crawford," Sullivan said. "Feel like it too. Thanks for coming. You call in that debt, I come running. That was the deal." He looked at Eleanor and the girls, at the assembled allies, At the community forming from wreckage. You did good here, real good. Didn't do it alone. Best things never are. Sullivan pulled out papers. Trial set for 3 weeks. Fort Benton. Evidence you gathered is solid. Medical reports, witness statements, his own father's letters. Prosecution's case is airtight. Marcus Brennan's going to prison. 20 years minimum, maybe more. He won't come back. Not for 2 decades. By then, Eleanor will have built a new life, one he can't touch. Nate felt something release in his chest. Tension he'd been carrying for 10 days. They'd won. By God, they'd actually won. Sarah tugged his sleeve. Mister? Nate, is it really over? He knelt down, ignored the screaming in his leg, met her eyes. Yeah, sweetheart, it's really over. We can stay. Long as you want. Forever. Yeah, forever. Sarah's face crumpled. She'd been strong for so long, been protector and parent and soldier. But she was still 10 years old, still a child who'd never been allowed to be one. She threw her arms around Nate's neck, held on like drowning. I was so scared he'd take us back, that it would start again. I know, but it won't. I promise, you're safe now, all of you. Emma appeared beside them, silent Emma, who hadn't spoken in 3 years. She held out a drawing. 5 people in front of a cabin, sun rising behind them. Underneath, in shaky letters, family safe forever. Then Emma spoke, first words in 3 years. Thank you, Papa. The world stopped. Papa. She'd called him Papa. This 7-year-old who'd been silenced by violence, who'd spoken only through art for years. She'd found her voice and used it to claim him. Nate couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Tears poured down his face unchecked. He pulled Emma into the hug with Sarah, held both girls, his girls, not by blood but by choice, by love, by the bonds forged in fire. Rose ran over, crashed into the group hug. Papa, Emma talked. She said, Papa. Eleanor stood watching, tears streaming down her face. Happy tears, relieved tears, all the tears she'd been holding for 15 years. Maggie Thompson put an arm around her shoulders. You did it, honey. You survived. You won. We won, Eleanor corrected. All of us together. Judge Sullivan cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt, but we need to get Brennan to Fort Benton. Trial prep starts tomorrow. You'll need to testify, Mrs. Brennan. I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it. Good. And Crawford, you're called as witness too. Medical treatment you provided, evidence you gathered, your testimony matters. I'll come. The marshals led Marcus away. He was still screaming, still threatening, but his voice grew smaller, fainter, until distance swallowed it completely. The townspeople lingered, offered help, offered supplies, offered apologies that came too late but came anyway. Eleanor accepted them with grace Nate didn't know she had, forgave sins that should have been unforgivable because holding grudges required energy and she was so tired of being angry. By noon, only the core group remained. Nate, Eleanor, the 4 girls, Maggie, Clara Hayes, John, Patricia, and Judge Sullivan. They sat around the table, ate beans and cornbread, simple food. But nobody was bleeding and nobody was afraid, and that made it a feast. What happens now? Sarah asked. Now we rebuild, Nate said. Finish the cabin, plant crops come spring, raise horses, live. Just live. Just live. Best revenge is living well. Emma was drawing again, but her pictures had changed. No more violence, no more hiding. Just 5 people working together, building, growing, thriving. Rose played with Violet, making the baby laugh. First real baby laughter in that cabin since Benjamin died 6 years ago. The sound filled spaces Nate had thought permanently empty. Eleanor sat beside him, took his hand under the table, squeezed. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Thank you for letting me save you. Thank you for seeing me as worth saving. Judge Sullivan stood, raised his cup of water. A toast to justice, to family, to second chances, and to the bravest people I've ever had the privilege to know. They drank, they laughed, they cried, they survived. Outside, the Montana sun climbed high. Winter was releasing its grip. Spring was coming, and with it new life, new hope, new beginnings. The war was over, the monster was caged, the family was safe. Now came the hardest part, learning to live without fear, learning to trust happiness, learning that broken people could heal and broken families could become whole. But they'd face it together, and together they could survive anything. 3 weeks after Marcus Brennan was dragged away in chains, Eleanor still couldn't stop shaking. Not from fear, not anymore. Fear had burned out of her during the confrontation, left behind something harder, something that could pull a trigger without hesitation. But now that the danger had passed, now that the adrenaline had drained away, her body remembered every blow, every broken bone, every night she'd prayed not to wake up. 15 years of trauma didn't heal in 3 weeks, didn't heal in 3 months. Maybe didn't heal at all, just learned to live alongside you like an old scar that ached when the weather changed. Nate found her standing in the snow at midnight, arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. "Can't sleep," he asked quietly. "Keep waiting for it to not be real, for Marcus to come back. For someone to tell me this was all a dream and I have to go home now. It's real. He's gone. I know. My head knows. But my body—" She held up her trembling hands. 15 years, Nate. 15 years of waking up scared, going to sleep scared, being scared every moment in between. I don't know how to stop. He didn't try to fix it with words, didn't tell her it would be okay, or that time healed all wounds. Just stood beside her in the cold, present, steady, there. "Give it time," he said finally. "Healing ain't linear. Some days you'll feel strong, some days you'll shake. Both are okay. What if I can't? What if I'm broken so deep I never—" Then we figure it out together. Broken don't mean worthless, Eleanor. Just means you survived something that should have killed you. That's strength, not weakness. She leaned against him. First time she'd initiated physical contact without fear driving her, just wanting closeness, wanting warmth, wanting him. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." They stood there until dawn painted the sky pink and gold. Two broken people learning that broken pieces could fit together. That survival was only the first step. Healing came after, and healing took time. The trial happened in Fort Benton 3 days later. Federal courthouse. Judge Sullivan presiding. Marcus Brennan sitting in chains still protesting his innocence to anyone who'd listen. Eleanor testified for 4 hours. Told the courtroom things she'd never said out loud. Described beatings in clinical detail. Showed scars that had healed crooked. Read from the doctor's reports proving Marcus knew what he was doing. The defense attorney tried to break her, tried to make her seem like an unreliable witness. A scorned woman seeking revenge. But Eleanor didn't break, didn't waver. Just told the truth in a voice that got stronger with every word. Sarah testified too. 10 years old, terrified, but determined. Described watching her father beat her mother unconscious. Described hiding her sisters. Described years of fear compressed into 20 minutes of testimony that left the courtroom silent. Emma didn't speak, couldn't yet, but she'd drawn pictures, dozens of them, visual testimony that needed no words. The judge admitted them as evidence. Let them speak for a little girl who'd lost her voice to violence. The jury deliberated for 40 minutes, came back with guilty verdicts on all counts: aggravated assault, fraud, abuse resulting in bodily harm, attempted murder, arson. Judge Sullivan sentenced Marcus Brennan to 25 years in territorial prison. No possibility of early release. He'd be 68 years old when he got out, if he survived that long. Marcus screamed as they led him away, threatened everyone, promised revenge. But his threats were empty wind. The monster had been caged. The nightmare was over. Eleanor walked out of that courtroom a free woman. Legally divorced, legally protected, finally safe. Nate was waiting on the courthouse steps. She ran to him, threw her arms around his neck, kissed him in front of God and everyone, not caring who saw, not caring what anyone thought. "It's over," she said against his lips. "Really over." "Yeah, it is." "What do we do now? Now we live." Living turned out to be harder than surviving. Surviving was just not dying. Living required hope, required believing tomorrow might be better than today, required trusting happiness when it came instead of waiting for it to turn to ash. Eleanor struggled with it. Some days were good. She'd laugh with the girls, help Nate with the horses, feel almost normal. Other days the fear came back. A door slamming would make her flinch. A raised voice would send her hiding. Loud noises triggered memories she couldn't control. But she kept trying, kept pushing forward, because the alternative was letting Marcus win even from behind bars. And she was done letting him win. 6 weeks after the trial, Nate found her feeding chickens in the morning cold. May had come to Montana, snow melting, grass growing, the world waking up from winter. He'd been thinking about this for days, rehearsing words, trying to find the right way to ask. But watching her there, hair catching the sunrise face, healing still beautiful despite everything she'd survived, the words just came. "Eleanor," she turned, smiled, real smile that reached her eyes. "I've been thinking," he said. Started to kneel, realized his leg still couldn't take. It settled for taking off his hat instead. "About us. About the girls. About what comes next. Nate, what are you? Let me finish before I lose my nerve." He twisted the hat in his hands. "I ain't got much. Half-built ranch. Stubborn horse. More grief than one man ought to carry. But I got a heart that started beating again the day I found you in that street." Eleanor's hands flew to her mouth. "If you'll have me," Nate continued, "all the broken, messed-up parts of me, I'd like to spend whatever time I got left trying to make you happy, trying to be the man those girls deserve, trying to build something that lasts." Tears poured down Eleanor's face. "Are you asking what I think you're asking? Eleanor Ann Whitfield, will you marry me?" She dropped the feed bucket, crossed to him in 3 steps, threw her arms around him so hard they both almost fell. "Yes," she said against his chest. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." "You sure? Because I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The cabin door burst open. Rose stood there, eyes wide. "Mama, why are you crying? Is something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, baby. Everything's right." "Then why the tears?" "Because Mr. Nate just asked me to marry him." Rose's face lit up like sunrise. "Does that mean he's going to be our papa, for real?" Nate knelt down to her level, ignored the screaming in his leg. "Only if you want me to be. I want you to be our papa." She turned back to the cabin. "Sarah, Emma, Mr. Cowboy's going to be our papa." The cabin erupted. Sarah appeared first, trying to look unimpressed, but failing. Emma followed, clutching a drawing she'd clearly just finished. Maggie came out, wiping her eyes with her apron. Even baby Violet, now 2 months old, seemed to babble approval. They gathered in the yard, this strange, patched-together family, and for the first time Eleanor understood what home really meant. Not a place. People. These people. "When's the wedding?" Rose demanded. "Soon," Eleanor said. "Maybe next week." "Can I wear a dress, a pretty one?" "We'll see." Sarah stepped forward. The skeptic. The protector. The one who'd tested Nate the hardest. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. Sharp. Decisive. "You better not make me regret trusting you," she said. "I'll spend my life earning it," Nate replied. "Good. Because if you hurt Mama or my sisters, I really will kill you." That wasn't an empty threat. "I know, and I meant what I said. If I hurt them, I'd deserve it." Something passed between them. Understanding, respect, the beginning of what might become love given time. Emma held out her drawing. 5 people in front of a cabin, a man and woman holding hands, 3 girls around them, a baby in arms. Above them, the word family. "Yeah," Nate said, voice thick. "Family." They were married on the first Sunday of May, 1879. Small ceremony behind the cabin where Nate had built a simple wooden arch. Nothing fancy, but solid, like him. Reverend Hayes performed the ceremony, redemption through service, making amends for years of cowardice by helping build something good from the wreckage. The guest list was small. Maggie Thompson, Clara Jennings, now officially the sheriff, Judge Sullivan, who'd made the trip special, John Two Rivers, the blacksmith, Miss Patricia Walsh, the school teacher, a handful of townspeople who'd actually helped when it mattered, and family, the real kind, the chosen kind. Eleanor wore a dress Maggie had sewn, simple white cotton with lace trim. Nothing elaborate, but it was hers. New, clean, no ghosts attached. The girls stood as bridesmaids, Sarah serious and watchful, Emma quiet but present, Rose bouncing with excitement. baby Violet sleeping peaceful in Maggie's arms. Nate wore his best clothes, dark pants, white shirt vest Martha had pressed 3 times, hair actually combed, boots clean. But his hands shook as Eleanor walked toward him across the spring grass. She was beautiful. Not despite the fading bruises, but because of them. Each scar a testament to survival, each healed bone a victory. She'd survived 15 years of hell and come out the other side strong enough to love again. That was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. The vows were simple, traditional. But when Eleanor promised to love and honor, she added her own words. I promise to trust even when I'm scared, to speak even when silence seems safer, to live instead of just survive, and to love you with everything I have left. Nate's vows came out rough. I promise to honor you, to protect you, to see you not as property or broken thing, just as Eleanor, just as the woman I love, for as long as I draw breath. When Hayes said Nate could kiss his bride, Eleanor grabbed him first, kissed him hard and desperate. A kiss that said she was choosing this, choosing him, choosing life. The small crowd cheered. Rose threw flowers with enthusiastic abandon. Emma smiled. Sarah nodded approval. Even baby Violet gurgled happy sounds. They were a family now, legal and true, bound not by blood but by choice, by love, by the decision to heal together instead of break apart. The celebration lasted all afternoon. Food appeared from nowhere. Neighbors showed up with dishes and well wishes. Music played. Children ran wild. For the first time in 15 years, Eleanor laughed without fear, danced without checking over her shoulder, lived without waiting for violence. As the sun set, Nate and Eleanor slipped away to the porch, watched the Montana sky turn pink and gold and purple, held hands, said nothing. Sometimes the best moments didn't need words. Thank you, Eleanor finally said. For what? For seeing me when everyone else looked away, for fighting when it would have been easier to walk past, for loving me even though I'm still broken in places. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. Am I really healing? Yeah, I see it every day. In the way you stand taller, speak louder, trust more. That's healing happening in real time. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you, Nathaniel Crawford. I love you too, Eleanor Ann Crawford. Crawford, her new name, her chosen name, the name that meant freedom instead of prison, future instead of past. Summer came hot and golden. The ranch transformed. Nate finally finished the cabin with help from John Two Rivers and other townspeople who decided making amends meant actual work. 2 more rooms added, proper kitchen, porch that wrapped around 3 sides. The girls each got their own bed. Eleanor got a kitchen she actually wanted to cook in. Maggie stayed because she'd found family here and wasn't about to leave it. Sarah learned to ride properly, not just sitting on a horse, but really riding, natural horsewoman. She took to it like breathing, spent hours with Storm and the 2 new horses Nate bought, found peace in the rhythm of hoofbeats and the trust between rider and mount. Emma started school in town, terrifying for a girl who'd barely spoken in years. But she came home the first day with a friend, quiet boy named Thomas, who also preferred drawing to talking. We don't have to talk, Emma explained in her soft new voice. We just draw together. It's nice. Rose remained Rose, sunshine and questions and endless energy. She started calling herself Rose Crawford before the adoption papers were even filed. That's my name now, she informed everyone who would listen. Rose Crawford, with a C for Crawford, which is my name, because Papa's my papa. Did you know that baby Violet grew stronger every day, started recognizing faces, started smiling, started being a baby instead of just surviving? Autumn painted the prairie gold and orange. The harvest came in. Not much, but enough. More than enough. They had food, shelter, each other. Everything that mattered. Then the letter came. Federal Prison Territorial Seal Official Business. Nate read it first, face going carefully neutral. What is it? Eleanor asked. Marcus. He's dead. She sat down hard. How? Stabbed in a fight over cards. Another prisoner. Marcus tried to cheat, got caught, got killed. Eleanor stared at the letter, should feel something. Relief, joy, closure. But she just felt empty. Not hollow empty. Full empty. Too full to feel anything about him. How do you feel? Nate asked carefully. I don't know. Thought I'd feel relief or happiness or something. But I just feel, she struggled for words. Free, finally completely free. Not because he's dead, because I realized he can't hurt me anymore, even if he was alive. He's got no power. Never did, just violence. And violence is the weakest power there is because it always burns out. That's wisdom. That's survival. She looked at him. I'm glad he's dead. Not because I wanted him dead. Because now I know for certain he can't come back. Can't hurt my girls. Can't touch this life we've built. You okay? Yeah, I really am. They burned the letter. Watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. Symbolic ending. Marcus Brennan reduced to smoke and memory. Soon to be just memory. Eventually, to be nothing at all. Winter came again. Full circle. 1 year since Nate had heard Eleanor scream in the street. 1 year since everything changed. They celebrated the anniversary with quiet dinner. Just family. The way Eleanor wanted it. Maggie raised her glass of cider. 2 second chances. To family, Sarah added. 12 years old now, still serious but learning to smile more. To Papa, Rose shouted. Emma spoke soft but clear. To love that heals instead of hurts. Eleanor stood, looked around the table at faces she loved, at the life she'd built from ruins, at the future stretching out before her. To all of it, she said. The pain that brought us here, the courage that kept us going, the man who saw us when nobody else would, and the life we're building together, one day at a time. She met Nate's eyes, smiled, really smiled. To home. To home, everyone echoed. They ate, they laughed. They told stories. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and white and new, covering the world in silence. Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep and Maggie had retired to her room, Eleanor found Nate by the window, watching snow fall like he'd done 1,000 times before, but different now. Not alone anymore. Can't sleep, she asked. Don't want to. Don't want this day to end. There'll be more days. I know, but this one's special. He turned to face her. A year ago, I was dying in this cabin, going through motions, existing but not living. Then you screamed, and everything changed. You changed it. We changed it, together. He pulled her close. I've been thinking about the future, about what comes next. And I want more. Want to finish the barn, plant bigger garden, maybe get cattle, build something that lasts, something we can pass down. Eleanor took a breath, steadied herself, now or never. Speaking of passing down, there's something I need to tell you. Nate's face went concerned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Just... She took his hand, placed it on her still flat stomach. I'm pregnant. Time stopped. Nate's face went through a dozen emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, fear, joy, terror, hope, all mixed together. Pregnant, he repeated. You're pregnant. About 2 months. Doctor confirmed it yesterday when I rode to town. Eleanor, that's... He couldn't finish. Tears were already falling. After Sarah and Benjamin, I thought I'd never... I know, me too. After Violet, after everything Marcus did, I thought I was done. But here we are. Boy or girl doesn't matter. No, Eleanor said firmly. It doesn't. Never did. That was Marcus's madness, not reality. Nate dropped to his knees, put his ear against her stomach like he could hear something already. Hello in there. I'm your papa. I'm going to mess up a lot, going to be scared a lot, but I promise to love you, to protect you, to see you as exactly who you are, not who I want you to be. Eleanor's hands found his hair, held him there. 2 broken people creating new life, proving that endings could be beginnings, that trauma didn't have to be destiny, that love could bloom in the ruins if you gave it space and time. I'm scared, Nate admitted. Me too, but we'll figure it out. Together. Together. They held each other while snow fell and the fire burned low. Inside, their daughters slept safe. Outside, the world turned white and clean. The next morning, Nate walked to the hill behind the cabin, to the 2 crosses he'd carved 6 years ago, Sarah and Benjamin Crawford, his first family, the ones he'd lost. He knelt in the snow, placed his hand on Sarah's marker. I'm going to be a father again, he said quietly. Eleanor's pregnant, due in summer. I'm terrified. Keep thinking I'm going to mess it up like I messed up with you and Benjamin. Keep thinking I don't deserve another chance." The wind blew, snow swirled. Nothing answered, but somehow he felt lighter. "I want you to know this doesn't replace you. Nothing could. But I'm learning that you can love new people without loving old people less. That the heart expands instead of replacing." He traced Benjamin's name carved in wood. "Eleanor's got 4 daughters, Sarah, Emma, Rose, and Violet. They're mine now, not by blood, but by choice. And they're amazing. Sarah's brave. Emma's healing. Rose is pure sunshine. Violet's starting to walk." Tears froze on his face. "I wish you could meet them. Wish Benjamin could grow up with them. But since he can't, I'm going to love them enough for both of us. Going to be the father he never got. Going to build the life we planned. Just with different people." He stood, looked at the cabin below, warm light from windows, smoke rising from chimney, family inside, his family. "Thank you for letting me love again, for not holding me to grief. I'll always carry you with me, but I'm going to live too. Really live, not just survive." He placed flowers on both graves, wildflowers dried from summer, simple. But Sarah had loved wildflowers. Walking back to the cabin, Nate felt something shift inside him, not forgetting, never forgetting, but making peace, accepting that life moved forward, that you could honor the dead by living well, that broken pieces could fit together and make something beautiful. Eleanor met him at the door, Sarah beside her, Emma with her drawings, Rose bouncing with excitement, Maggie holding Violet, who was trying her first steps. "Papa," Violet said. First word. First time. "Papa." She stumbled forward on wobbly legs, arms stretched toward Nate. He dropped to his knees, caught her before she fell, lifted her high. "That's right, little one. Papa." Violet laughed. Pure baby joy. The sound filled the cabin, filled the empty spaces, filled Nate's heart with something that felt like healing, like hope, like home. Eleanor watched from the doorway, one hand on her stomach where new life grew, other hand held by Sarah, family surrounding her, love-filling spaces violence had tried to hollow out. "We made it," she whispered. "We did," Nate said, holding Violet. "We really did." Rose tugged his sleeve. "Papa, can we go riding today? Can we please?" "Yeah, sweetheart, we can go riding. All of us. All of us." They gathered coats and gloves, prepared for a day in the snow, no danger waiting, no violence lurking, just family doing family things, building memories that would last. As they stepped into the white world, Eleanor paused, looked back at the cabin, her cabin now, her home, her life. 1 year ago she'd been dying in a frozen street, praying for it to end, certain help would never come. Today she stood free, married to a man who saw her as person instead of property, mother to 5 children who knew what love actually meant, pregnant with new life that represented hope instead of fear. Some debts took a lifetime to pay, some loves got a second chance, and sometimes broken pieces fit together better than they ever did whole. Eleanor took Nate's hand, stepped into the snow, into the future, into the life they'd built from ruins. Behind them, the cabin stood solid, smoke rising, light glowing, a beacon in the white world. Home. The end.